How's it going, everyone? Yossa back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Today, I've got something special for you. I've been given the privilege from Volkswagen Canada to review the 2024 Volkswagen ID4. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Yossa, there's a million electric cars out there on the road. Why is this one special? And that's a great question. That's what we're here to find out today. So let's go. So this is the all-new, refreshed 2024 Volkswagen ID4. It's a compact electric SUV from Volkswagen that's set to rival Tesla Model Y, the Mustang Mach-E, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6, and a whole bunch of others. So this particular ID4 is the top-of-the-line Pro S all-wheel drive model. And it's got an 82 kilowatt-hour battery pack and 335 horsepower and has 423 kilometers of range. And the prices start from around $51,000 for the rear-wheel drive base model, which has a 62 kilowatt-hour battery and goes up all the way to $63,000 and change for this particular one. There's also a great $5,000 incentive from the government that you can use in Canada. I don't know about the States or other places in the world, but it's a really nice addition when you're trying to buy something that's a bit more expensive than a conventional car. So first we're going to talk about the ID4 and see how it stacks up as a car. And then at the end, I'm going to summarize everything with my thoughts around whether I think it's a really great electric car or not. So if we take a look at the styling, just to start off, it's a good looking car. There's nothing really offensive or super sporty about it, but it's a good looking car. It doesn't stand out tremendously, but it looks nice. And I don't know, there's something fun about it. Every time I look at it, it just seems like a happy place to be. And I think there's something really great about the unique sort of subtle styling about cars. It's not very showy, it's not loud, it's not jumping out in your face. And a lot of electric cars now sort of have their own unique looks. This one keeps things relatively reserved. And there's a few things about it that I think are just so cool. If we take a look at the headlights, for example, they've got a really nice, unique design to them. It almost looks like an eye. And at night, when it's all lit up, it looks so cool. There's a really nice sort of daytime running light section over here that just goes around the headlight unit along through this light bar that goes into the Volkswagen logo, which actually lights up at night. So it tells everybody around you, look at me, I got a really cool Volkswagen. And if we go around to the back, you get a similar story with the taillights. It's a really nice, simple design, but when you look a little bit closer, you've got all of these really cool details inside the taillights. And I feel like that just makes it a little extra special. And you've got this light bar over here that goes back into the Volkswagen logo, which also lights up at night. So you've got a really nice light signature around the car. And in my opinion, those little details really add up. Now, one other really cool thing about the styling, just as we're on the topic, you'll notice here there's a really nice sort of very bold body line. And it goes all along sort of the length of the car. And I feel like that's a very distinctive thing that Volkswagen and Audi products have that not all cars have anymore. And it's got this really, really nice crease to it that I think adds a lot of character. And it's funny because I recently drove a Tesla Model Y, and looking at the Model Y compared to this ID4, I just feel like the ID4 looks so much better. The Model Y is a little bland looking, but this at least has some character with those lines that go around the body. Now there is a bit of a trend with SUVs nowadays to have this sort of rugged styling, and I'm doing that with air quotes in my behind the camera so you can't see it, but there's always this concept of if you have plastic cladding around the side of the car, it's going to look rugged and sporty and off-roady. And if you take a look here, we've got a nice healthy dose of plastic cladding that goes around the wheel wells and at the bottom of the door sills. I'm not a huge fan of plastic cladding. It's not a deal breaker by any means for something like this, but I'm always a fan when automakers decide to paint that area and make it look a little fresh and cohesive with the body design. Now with this car, it's not so bad because you'll find at the top, you've got sort of a blacked out section just above the windows, and it does match very nicely on this car. A lot of cars nowadays also have these really over-engineered door handles, and this one actually is pretty good. It's not a traditional door handle by any means, so you can't just pull this up and open it. There's a little electronic popper that goes inside that you just pull, and it allows you to open the door. Now the great thing about this compared to some of the other door handles that I've seen that sort of rise out of the door or present themselves when you unlock the car is Well, I live in Canada and it's cold here, and in the winter sometimes these types of features get frozen. And because there's no physical part that moves off of the door handle, you don't have to worry about the door handle freezing, not being able to come out when you want to unlock the car. And that I feel like is a really great thing, and it still looks really nice and flush on the door panel of the car, so it helps out with that efficiency and aerodynamics. One thing that's a little unfortunate with this car is I love the Volkswagen sort of trick logo in the back that you can flip up and open up the tailgate. And unfortunately with the ID4, we lose that. There is nothing here. It's just simply the logo in the back that lights up, which is very cool, but that means that the backup camera is all the way down here. Now it has a little sprayer that will wash it when it gets dirty, but it's still going to get covered up with a lot of grime and dirt, and that to me is a bit unfortunate. I wish they would have kept the logo that flips up with the backup camera in there, because I just feel like that was such a distinctive feature of Volkswagen, and it really helped with the backup camera. All right, let's move on into the interior of the car. Now, I've always said that Volkswagen has been a master at making some really practical, functional, easy to use interiors, and I feel like for the ID4 it's no different. Even though this is an electric car, it's not something foreign. Anybody could get into this car and know exactly where everything is and be able to drive it with ease. And it just seems like a really nice place to be. There's a good use of very soft touch materials. There's some nice stitching. There's some really cool details in the seats. You've got the perforated leatherette over there. You've got that ID logo up on the seat back as well. And it just seems like a really, really great place to be. Everything is really solid like it is in every Volkswagen. It's not overstyled, but it's comfortable, it's convenient, and it has a sense of luxury to it. The only downside I would say is there's a bit of cost cutting that you can feel in the interior. So even though you've got some really nice materials for the steering wheel and for the dash, it's very soft touch, there's a little bit of that gloss black plastic peppered out throughout in really high touch areas that I feel like probably will not hold up over time. You've got it over here on sort of the armrest on the door panel. You've got a lot of that gloss black plastic over here as well near the cup holders on the center console. And for, we'll call it the little bit of cost cutting that we find, the knobs over here for the mirror adjustment just feels a little cheap. And I kind of wish they had another set of buttons here for the rear windows for opening and closing them. In this case, you've got to open and close the front ones separately, and then when you're ready to open the back ones, you tap that rear button, and then it allows you to press those buttons and control the rear windows. And I just feel like if they had the 4 buttons there, that's something that didn't have to be re-engineered and could be a bit of a cost-cutting piece. Now, if we look in the door bins, you may have seen in my Golf R video, I had the felt lining in there, and we don't have that over here, but they are really generous and big door bins. And even in the back, we don't have exactly the same materials back here, although I have to say it is much nicer than in the Golf R. Here you've got the same sort of leatherette material for the armrests, you've got that same stitching, you've got a really nice Harman Kardon logo for the speaker grille, but you've got a little bit of that scratchy black plastic up here, so you don't get exactly the same materials as you had in the front. But otherwise, when you look in the back seats, you've got perforated leather, you've got a nice cup holder over there in the armrest, you've got the ventilation in the back as well with heated seats, and you've got all the USB charging that you need. So it is a functional and really nice back seat, but again, there is a bit of an element of cost cutting that you find throughout the car. Now, a few things that I think are really cool with the interior of this car is the shifter. Now, to put the car in reverse, neutral, park, drive, you've got this knob that's kind of sitting off of the steering column that you just twist, and you'll see it's very easy and intuitive. Unlike a lot of other manufacturers that have buttons on the center console and dials, this one you just twist and it makes it super easy to use. And when you do twist it into gear, you'll see there's that light bar on the front of the car, on the front of the dash, that interacts with you as well. So it gives you a visual representation to know, yes, I've put it into drive, I've put it into reverse or neutral or into park, which is just really cool. Also, things sort of welcome you when you get into the car, and I really love those types of details. If I close the door and I just put my foot on the brake, the seat moves forward, you get a really nice welcome logo over here. There's a really cool strip of lighting that goes all across the top of the dash over there. And not only does it affect the ambient lighting, but it also has some function that's built into it as well. So if you're in an emergency situation and you need to brake and the car thinks that you're not paying attention, that will flash and pulsate red, and it shows you the charge. As you're charging the car, it'll sort of light up based on the percentage of charge that you have, which I think is really cool. There's also some really nice ambient lighting that comes along sort of just under the dash over here, and it lights up all the way across. And I'm a big fan of ambient lighting. And look at this. You've got so many different settings for the ambient lighting. And that's one thing that I really have to give a lot of credit to for Volkswagen, is they give you so much customizability with these cars. Now, one thing that I talked about in the Golf R that I think is very similar also with this car is, despite having a lot of different types of materials in here and a little bit of gray and some stitching all around, it does feel a little bit dark. And you've got this beautiful panoramic roof on the top that lets in a lot of really nice natural light, but everything is just very dark. It's very black and gray, and I just wish there was a little bit more color in the interior. You've got this really nice accent piece over here, and you've got the gloss black that sort of breaks everything up, but it would be nice if there was a choice of just some more colors in here to add some personality to the car and just help it feel a little bit more exciting. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning is this car, when it first came out, and it got a lot of hate because the car came out with a lot of capacitive touch buttons, both on the infotainment screen, but also on the steering wheel. And a lot of people said, you know, we really don't like that. We want the buttons that we used to have. And to be honest with you, I've lived with the Golf R now for about a year and have the same sort of steering wheel button situation, and I really haven't had any issues with it. It's not something that bothers me at all, but I understand that there is some value in having the physical buttons so you know exactly where they are, and when you touch them, you can really feel that you've hit the button that you wanted to select. But now with this new infotainment system, you've got really nice sliders that are backlit. That's something that really bothered people when the car first came out. But now you can see these at night. You know exactly where you're touching. And to be honest with you, it's really not that hard to use. You can slide your finger across if you want to do some big changes. You can tap it if you'd like. You can do sort of a double tap if you want to put the heated seats on. There are a few really great shortcuts that come along with this. And the screen is just beautiful. The colors are really nice. It's super responsive. It's really customizable. You've got these really nice shortcuts that you can load up here. You can change around things if you want, so you don't have to have whatever it is that sort of came with the car. And I feel like it just feels like a more premium car when you look at the screen compared to a lot of the rivals out there. Now, I've been in many cars, and to say that the screens are very different is an understatement. And that's something that I can say Volkswagen is really invested in over here. You've got a beautiful screen, both for the infotainment, but you also have a really nice gauge cluster over here. Not every electric car has a gauge cluster anymore. A lot of electric cars are sort of doing away with that because you've got a beautiful screen on the side that you can look at. A lot of cars have a heads-up display as well. This one doesn't, but you don't need it because you've got a really great display over here that tells you everything that you need to know. It's also customizable. You can change different views on the screen, so you can have different information that you want to see if you don't want to just have your speedometer there. The other cool thing about it is if you want to raise and lower the steering wheel, that screen moves with it. So you're never going to block that screen if you need to adjust the steering wheel, which I think is a very clever thing to do. Another important thing to mention about the infotainment system is you've got these dedicated buttons over here, which is really important. Not every car has a home screen, and you can customize whatever you want on the home screen, but you've got a home button right in the middle. All of your climate control options just here on the bottom. Those never go away. So unlike the Golf R, where I used to have a little pad over here where you had to hit climate and the different drive modes, you've got all of that dedicated over here, so you don't have to worry about finding it as you're driving along. And to be honest with you, it makes a huge difference. I mentioned one of the complaints that I had with the Golf R was you couldn't sync it directly from the screen, and you'd have to go into the climate menu and then hit sync. Here you don't have to. You've got a really easy way of just hitting that sync button right over here, and you've got access to your heated seats, your cooled seats, your drive modes. I think that's a really nice way of just incorporating things into the screen without having the buttons, but also not doing away with an easy access for the most important things that you're going to touch all the time. Now, if I go back to the seats, I wanted to talk about them for a second because they're super comfortable. Now, a lot of cars have comfortable seats, but it's really nice when they're super plush and they have some really cool details in them. And I showed you before, and I'll just bring it back down. You've got these really nice sort of geometric shapes built into the seats, into the perforations. And I really love that they etched in that ID logo in the seat back as well. I think that's just a really cool touch and helps the car stand out and feel a little bit more premium. And you also have the really nice stitching that goes around sort of the headrests and the back of the seats, and it continues on the armrest over here. And you also have adjustable headrests. So if you wanted to raise them up or bring them a little bit lower for your comfort, you have the ability of doing that as well. Now, the one thing that I miss in this interior, and I wish they had it, was the ratcheting armrest. Here it's just an open and close function. You don't get to ratchet it up and down or slide it forward or move it back. And that's something that I really miss from the Golf models. And I must say, there's a lot of room in there. You can fit a ton of stuff in here, which I think is really awesome. And that brings me on to my next point, which is there's a lot of clever storage in this car. We already showed you the door bins over there. You've got a really nice big glove box over here. You also have storage in the center console area. It's a really nice sort of big opening area with two big cup holders, but you also have some storage just over here. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a felt lined area over here. You can stick stuff in there if you want to get it out of the way. And there's a lot of really good storage in the back as well. So we'll move to the back just so I can show you that as well. Again, you've got some really nice big door bins in the back. You have some really cool functional pockets back here. If you wanted to put an iPad or some books, you've got that. You've got another little section up here if you wanted to put your cell phone or some other small thing in there. I also really like that they still have the cup holders and the armrest, and you've got a pass-through that goes directly into the trunk as well. And that's a feature that I use a ton in my Golf R, and it's really nice to see that that was carried forward over here. Now, it's really great when you're in an electric car because you don't have the need for a big tunnel hump over here for transmission. So you don't really have anything to obstruct your legroom over there, which is really awesome because when you have people in the back seat and you want to use that middle seat, sometimes it gets a little tight with the foot room, but in the ID4, you really don't have that issue. And there's a lot of space back here, not just for legroom and headroom, but you also have a very airy feeling in there because of that huge giant panoramic sunroof and the great shape of the car that gives you a lot of interior space. Now, one thing that I will mention is a lot of electric cars have a front trunk. This one doesn't, although it does have a really big trunk in the back, and it's got one of those great features where you can just sort of wave your foot under the car and then the trunk opens, which is so helpful when you've got kids and you go grocery shopping. You've got a lot of things to carry. But if you look in the trunk, you've got a ton of space in here. And not only do you have space sort of in the general loading area, if you lift up the floor over here, you've got a second storage area just below that where you can put all of your charging cables or other small things that you may want to store in there and not have visible for everybody else. There's also sort of a trick loading section over here where you can move this shelf, bring it a little bit lower, and now it opens up just a bit more storage if you wanted. So overall, the car is really practical. You've got a ton of space in there. It's really quiet, it's really comfortable. You've got a lot of room to move around. And the great thing is you get a lot of awesome standard features that come with the base model. So you don't have to spend a ton of money to get all the creature comforts. You get the heated seats with the base model, all of the safety tech, and wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as well. So it comes really well equipped just as a base model. And as you move up, of course, you get more features with the car. You get a bigger battery pack, you get more power, and all-wheel drive. You don't have to step all the way up to the top model to get all the stuff that you want. So the big question is now, how does it drive? Well, let's go in the car and find out. All right, so as we go for a little drive, the first impressions driving this car, you know, they're really good. I have to say, I haven't driven a lot of electric cars, and I wasn't sure exactly what to feel getting into this one, but I have to say, it was really easy. It's one of those cars where you just get into it and it feels very familiar. It's easy to drive. You don't have to worry about trying to figure out a whole bunch of different settings and getting used to the crazy strong regenerative braking. You know, this is the type of car that anybody can get into and feel comfortable right away. And it's very quiet. You know, all electric cars are generally speaking very quiet, but this one in particular I'm finding is really nice. It's got a lot of good sound deadening, keeps a lot of that noise outside of the car away from you, and the seats are just so comfortable. It's such a pleasure to get in here and go for a drive. You feel very relaxed. You know, there's nothing that'll stress you out in here. There's nothing complicated with the infotainment system. There's nothing complicated with the way that the car drives. You can just get in and go. And I think that is one of the unique features about this car. There are a lot of different types of electric cars out there, and I think one of the things that companies try to do when they make them is to sort of reinvent the wheel. They want something creative, something new, something exciting. But there's also a drawback behind that. It makes it a bit more complicated for the average person to get in, and sometimes it turns them off a little bit. This is the type of car that I feel like anybody coming from any car would be able to get into and be able to drive daily and not have to think too much about it. And that's something that I think is really great about this car. It's got enough power, it's got enough range. You know, it's sort of the jack of all trades when it comes to electric cars. There are some cars that, you know, have really great party pieces where they've got a ton of power and they can accelerate really quickly. There are some that have really cool lighting and some that have really cool styling. You know, this car just sort of does everything right. There's nothing obnoxious about it. There's nothing that really makes you question, why would they do that? It just works. And I think, like the Golf R, it's one of those types of vehicles that, you know, it does a lot really, really well. And if I were in the market looking for a compact SUV that, you know, didn't necessarily have to be a gasoline car, I would definitely be shopping for this one, especially with the price. It's not too expensive. A lot of electric cars are expensive, they're pricey. You know, for $53,000 for a base model, I think that's about average for most cars nowadays. It's really hard to buy a car now under $50,000. There aren't a lot, especially with the SUVs. And, you know, if you look at a Honda CR-V or a Toyota RAV4 and you spec it up all the way, they're also in the $50,000 range. So you're not spending that much more money to get an electric car than you would be to get a plug-in hybrid Honda CR-V or RAV4. And the nice thing about this car compared to those is you get all the benefits of having an electric car. It's quiet, there's low maintenance, it's comfortable. You've got really great technology in here. The screens are exceptionally good. You know, that's something that not every car can say they do really well. And I love that about this car. You know, it's super clear. It's like looking at a really high resolution TV screen, and that's awesome. You know, you want that when you're getting a new car. That's the tech piece that makes it feel modern and exciting and will hopefully keep it feeling modern for the foreseeable future. So in short, to answer the question that we started off with, is this worth considering? Is the new 2024 ID4 worth buying over its competitors? Well, it's definitely better looking in my opinion than the Model Y. I think the execution of this car is done really, really well, and I think it deserves a place with some of the big boys. So with this car in particular, I feel like you're not making a lot of compromising switching to electric over getting a gasoline one. So thank you so much for watching the video today. I really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something really cool about the Volkswagen ID4, and that it's opened your mind a little bit to an electric car that I think is a really great option if you're thinking about electric but are kind of scared about it because it's so different. This really isn't. This is a car that I feel like anybody would enjoy and be a great alternative to a Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, Mazda CX-5, or anything else. So thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next video.